Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stephanie Will, and I'm the Mental Health Services Program Manager here at Montgomery College. I work with our Student Health and Wellness Center for Success. You might have heard of the Shaw Center before. We do a number of different wellness programming for students here at the college. You might have heard of the mobile markets. That tends to be one of our more high-profile things that we do, but we do a lot of other things, including domestic violence awareness. I do the mental health programming. We do fun stress relieving events like Mindful Mondays. We offer support groups for our students. Plus, we're also offering our peer-to-peer program, which includes things like mentoring and support groups led by other students here at Montgomery College. So I encourage everyone to check out the Shaw Center website on the Montgomery College website or any of our social media platforms to see a little bit more about what type of programming we offer and how it can benefit you. So I am here today to talk a little bit about how we deal with stress and how we can use something like mindfulness to help manage our stress. Mindfulness is something that I really enjoy. I'll talk all about it, and you'll get to hear how much I geek out about it. But uh, stress relief isn't the same for everybody. It's very individualized. So if you go through this presentation, we're going to be doing a practical mindfulness activity, and you say, oh my gosh, I hate this, Miss Will, what is this? That's okay. If you don't like it, if it's not for you, it's not for you. And there's plenty of other self-care, stress relieving things that are out there that you can try that can be really healthy and wonderful for you. But I do hope you like mindfulness as much as I do. I find it something easy and something quick and simple that we can do to help ourselves. So as I get started into our presentation, I'm going to turn my video off so you don't have to worry about me. And we'll talk a little bit today, first about stress and the negative impacts that it has on the body and the brain. We'll talk about mindfulness, and also we're going to look at a little bit of research to see how effective it actually is in combating stress. I mentioned we'll be actually doing a guided mindfulness exercise, and then we'll talk about different ways that we can incorporate mindfulness into our daily self-care routines. So first, stress. It's something that everybody experiences. Nobody gets a get out of feeling stressed free card. It comes with the territory of being human. And especially now during COVID and remote learning, there are so many additional stressors that we're all faced with. So I don't know that I have talked to a single person in my personal or my work life since COVID started that hasn't been stressed out at some point in time, and more so than they normally are stressed out. So if you're feeling that, that's totally normal. That is what we are all going through right now. Most people don't know that there are actually two different kinds of stress. There's actually good stress, which is what we call eustress, and then bad stress, which is what we call distress. Most people are much more familiar with the bad stress, but good stress is actually something that we want in our lives. It helps us focus. It helps us get the task at hand done. So things like a challenging class, um, buying a first house, welcoming a new child into the family. There's a number of different things that they push you. We learn, we grow from these stressful experiences, and we come out the other side feeling really good. Like, have you ever gotten through like a particularly challenging class that you went into and you're like, I don't know if I'm quite ready for this, but you get through, and maybe it was really hard the whole time, but you feel like really accomplished afterwards, and you're like, yes, I did it. That's awesome. That's that good stress that we want in our lives. Now, bad stress that we are probably most familiar with is this frequent and intense stress, and it can really strain our body. So if we're going through a class that maybe we didn't think we were entirely ready for, and you are struggling with being able to sleep the entire time, you're feeling additionally anxious all the time, and when you finally get through that semester and you get through your finals and you're just completely wiped. You don't have a positive feeling about it. You're just like, I am so happy to be done with this. I am physically and mentally exhausted. That's that bad stress. And it can really make it hard for us to function and do the things that we need to do on a daily basis, including homework. Um, it's important to know that, we talk about, stress causing heart attacks. There is no actual direct link between stress and heart disease, but what we do know about stress is that it does increase hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol, which is, if you know, your fight or flight response. So your body is basically gearing up to either run from something scary or to fight that something scary. So to do that, it increases our blood pressure, it increases our heart rate, getting that blood pumping as fast as we possibly can. Too much of that can lead to a strain on our cardiovascular system. So while that direct link isn't there, we do know that those hormones do have a negative impact on our body in that way. So how can you tell if you're too stressed out? Everyone probably has their own different signs that they know. When I'm stressed out, these are some of the things that I notice about myself. So I want you to take a minute or so and just kind of write down what are some of the things from this list, or maybe something that's not on this list, that when these things start happening, you're like, I know I'm stressed out right now. For me personally, irritability is a big one. When I start getting snippy with people, I'm like, ooh, I'm much more stressed out than I realized. I also carry a lot of stress in my neck and my shoulders. And motivation is another huge one. And that's something that we're also seeing a lot during COVID, that people may want to do things, they may want to get up, they may want to clean their house, they may want to do their homework, but there's just something inside that's making it so hard to get up out of bed or to get up off the couch. And it's not just that, we really want to watch that one extra episode on Netflix. It's something deeper than that. So the motivation problem is something we've been seeing a lot of. Trouble sleeping is also another one that's been big. Back in the beginning of COVID, everyone was talking about the vivid dreams that they were having. And when we continue to have vivid dreams like that, it doesn't feel like we're rested. It doesn't feel like we are sleeping properly. Weakened immune system is another big one. If this is not your first semester in college, maybe you have experienced this in the past, but I remember coming home after finals every semester and being like, yes, I made it through, I'm done. I'm just gonna, really enjoy my break. And I get home and I almost immediately I'm sick, whether it's like a really bad cold or a sinus infection. All that stress can weaken our immune system. And right now with COVID, we want our immune systems to be, pumping at full speed. We need all of those good cells in our body to be doing their job. So if you notice that you're experiencing a lot of these, or have been experiencing some of them very intensely, it's really important to, maybe take a screener. There's a wonderful website, Mental Health America. They have a number of screeners related to stress. And you can take those, because a screener is not a diagnostic tool. It's not like a test that says you have this or you have that. It's basically just saying, hey, based on what you're saying, it sounds like maybe you are a little stressed out. So you can take those results to your primary care physician, to a therapist, religious leader, whoever it may be that you feel comfortable talking to that is a professional in some way, and say, hey, listen, I took this screener, I'm feeling really stressed out and I need a little bit of help. Where can I get help from? And again, like I said, primary care physicians are a great place to start if you don't already have a therapist. So self-care, what is self-care? Take take a moment as I'm talking, and just write down what is self-care to you. Not necessarily what are the things that you do to take care of yourself, but the whole concept of self-care, what is it? So, I mean, in the simplest of terms, self-care is taking care of yourself, right? And it's not just taking care of our mental health. I'm the mental health person here at the college. So everyone thinks I'm only talking about, making sure to maintain our mental health, which to me, obviously very important, but we need to be taking care of all different aspects of our life. So that includes our physical health, our financial health, um, our environmental health. If you've ever, done a really deep cleaning of the place you live, whether it's with family, on your own, and afterwards you're like, it looks so clean. My life feels less cluttered, less disorganized. Um, you know, our environment is really impactful. So self-care is really taking care of all of those different aspects going on in our lives. Now, how important do you think self-care actually is on a scale of 1 to 10? Just think, one being it's not important at all, and 10 being the most important thing that you do for yourself in a day. Where do you feel self-care is on that scale of 1 to 10? Now, when I'm doing this presentation live, I'll get in the chat box tens, 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 nines, eights, tens, 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 tens. People recognize how important self-care is. We know, we hear this, again, besides me badgering you about taking care of yourself, professors say it, our family members say it, people on the news say it. It's so important to make sure we're taking care of ourselves. But the reality of the situation is, how much time are we actually spending on self-care? So again, on that scale of, all the important things that are going on in your day, making sure that you eat, another form of self-care. How much time are we actually spending on doing something that we know makes us feel good, makes us feel happy, makes us feel less stressed? Are we spending 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes a week? At what point are we really prioritizing that ability to take care of ourselves? If anybody is a Grey's Anatomy fan, Christina Yang, in her early days as an attending, asking, should I sleep or should I shower? I could sleep in the shower, but I'm also starving. See, that's what ends up happening. And that's that result of the bad stress, that we're not taking care of our hygiene. We're not feeding ourselves with good foods. We're not getting our 8 hours of sleep, which is very important for us. So when we talk about self-care, it's really important to know who we are, to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves appropriately. Like I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, not everybody is going to enjoy the same things. Whenever I'm having an event on campus, I always bring coloring. So many students just absolutely love coloring. They can just sit there for hours and hours and be, very content and feel so relaxed. I cannot sit and color. I get so stressed out when I'm coloring. I'm, spending too much time making sure everything is perfect. It's all the same shade, picking the colors, the whole 9 yards. I get overly invested in it, and it's not relaxing for me. So making sure that we know who we are, what we like. Also knowing whether we're introverted or extroverted. A lot of times people think that being an introvert means you like being by yourself, or being an extrovert means you like being with other people. And that's not necessarily true. It's about where we get our energy from. Introverts tend to get their energy from being by themselves, using that time to recharge, doing activities alone, whereas extroverts recharge and get their energy from being around groups of people. I like to use the example of, I love being with my friends. I love going out, doing things, going to restaurants, and all that, having a great time. We talk, we laugh. I come home, I'm exhausted. I had a great time. It was wonderful, but I'm exhausted because I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. So I kind of have to spend the next day recovering by myself and regaining that energy that I lost, that I spent with my friends. And if you're an introvert like me and you've had a weekend where it's just back to back to back to back social engagements, you go into the next week feeling exhausted because you were just so, not necessarily busy, but you didn't get that time to to recharge the way that you know you need to recharge. Making sure that we're scheduling self-care time. Um, I've talked to people who are like, oh yeah, like the gym is my self-care or cooking is my self-care. But if we're not making time to do it, and not only just making time to do it, but setting it aside for this is my self-care time, um, who else is going to prioritize that for us? You know, put put your self-care in your calendar, whether that's your phone calendar, or if you're old school and you like having like a journal and writing down, all of your dates and whatnot. Um, Put that time in there. I'm scheduling 20 minutes for self-care on Tuesday, and I'm not going to cancel on myself, right? Even though things, may come up that might sound like, oh, so and so is, wants to have like a Zoom night with some friends. And while that sounds really awesome, I've already had 3 Zoom nights this week and I'm an introvert, and I know that that's going to be really hard for me. So maybe I take a pass this time. Making sure we're not canceling on ourselves, that, or, by the other hand, if you're an extrovert and someone schedules a Zoom night and you're like, I'm not feeling really motivated. Do I know if I really want to go? Force yourself to go, and really use that time to be extroverted and to talk to other people. We need to make sure we're prioritizing ourselves. Another big thing is making sure that we have balance, or not balance, boundaries. Sorry, I don't like the word balance, between work, school, our personal lives. The reason I don't like balance is because there's never making that teeter totter even. It's just not going to happen. There's going to be days when there's something personal going on and it's going to take priority over your work or your school stuff, and other days when you have an exam coming up the next day, and so you've got to put your personal life stuff on hold. So that teeter totter is always going to be going in one direction or the other. But when we have boundaries, what we're doing is being present in whatever area of our life that we're in at that moment. So when we are doing schoolwork, we're not also texting with our friends, we're not also watching Netflix, we are putting all of our energy and focus into school. When we're with our family or our friends, we're not checking work emails, we're not thinking about the projects that we have to do for school. We're being there and we're being present. um, and we need to be even more intentional during the pandemic, because so many of us are working from home. So that physical differentiation of, oh, leave work, when you walk out of the door, leave work there. When you drive off campus, leave school there. It doesn't happen. My office is not even 10 steps away from my bedroom. So that division of space isn't there so much. So it takes a lot of extra effort to make those boundaries. And as best we can, we need to try to define those workspaces separate from our family spaces. And I know that that is challenging for a lot of people. Maybe you live with 4 or 5 other people. Your bedroom's really the only place that you have that's quiet to do work. So you work in your bed. But when we work in our bed, that creates an association for our brain that says, oh, I need to be awake and I need to be focused. So then when you actually go to bed, your brain is thinking, oh, I need to be awake and be focused because we do work in bed. And so we don't want to create that association. So if what you need to do is to create a little pillow fort on the floor, and that's the space that you do your homework in, that's fine. It's just try to get as much differentiation as you possibly can given your current circumstances. And probably the most important thing about all of these boundaries is knowing that some days it's just not going to work the way you want it to, and that's okay. There's going to be days when you're like, okay, I really have to study for school, this is really important, and then your kid comes running in the room and says, mommy, I have a fever, and then you have to deal with that. Or you're planning on spending time with, your friends or your family, and, maybe you are a medical professional and something with work comes up and you get called in. We can't always make things go exactly the way we want to go, but we have to be compassionate with ourselves when things don't work out the way we want it to. That's not giving us permission to relax those boundaries when we don't have to, but just understanding that there's never going to be a perfect boundary. It's not a wall, it's kind of one of those flappy construction, flag kind of barriers, those like orange nets. That's the kind of the boundary that we tend to have. They need to be flexible. Okay, so mindfulness. Mindfulness is actually just paying attention on purpose. And you're probably sitting here saying, Miss Will, what on earth is the purpose of just paying attention? I pay attention all the time. But the truth is, oftentimes as we're going through our day, even when we're doing something, we are focused on other things that are going on around us. Like when we eat, if you live with your family, maybe you're all having conversations around dinner and you're not focused on what you're eating. Or if you live alone, maybe you turn the television on and you're watching what's on TV rather than eating. I know when we were on campus, I had a very long drive, about an hour and 15 minutes each way from work. And there were certain mornings where I would get halfway to work and be like, how did I get here? And it's not that I was, not that I wasn't awake. My eyes were open. I could see the other cars. If someone stopped short, I stopped. But I'm not being present. I'm not being fully aware. My mind is worrying about what emails I have to deal with, or what's happening after work that I'm excited to, just get through the day so I can go home and hang out with my friends. So if you really think about how much are we actually paying attention to the things that we do every day versus how often are we just going through the motions? The other thing about mindfulness is, again, being in that moment, but doing so without judgment. We're not saying that whatever is happening is good or bad. We're just noticing things as they are. So if we're being mindful about our stress, we're checking in with our body and saying like, oh, okay, like I am feeling some tightness in my neck and my shoulders. We're not saying that's bad, I need to get rid of it. But what it is, it's a clue. It tells us something that, okay, maybe I'm more stressed than I realize right now. And that's something that I've also seen a lot during COVID, where if you talk to people and you ask them like, are you feeling stressed out? Are you feeling anxious about COVID? They're like, no, not really. But then they're complaining about all these somatic issues. They're talking about, I've had really bad stomach pains or gas for weeks and weeks. I've had a lot of headaches. That's the word I'm looking for. I've been having a lot of headaches every day. So our body is telling us that we're stressed out, even if our mind is kind of trying to protect itself in that way. Mindfulness also helps us interact with our world differently. So thinking about when we're having a conversation with somebody, are we really present in that conversation? Are we listening to what that person is saying to us? Or are we, on our phone, like, oh, what else is going on while I'm talking to this person? So there's also a number of different ways that we can practice mindfulness. The first is some micro mindful minutes that we can just use as we're going through our everyday life. And then there's also a set aside time for meditation that we can do. And we're going to talk about both of those aspects. So mindfulness is a little bit different than meditation as we generally think about it, but they are used interchangeably. Meditation is more of an umbrella term, and mindfulness meditations can fit up under there. But oftentimes when we think about meditation, we think about maybe the shavasana at the end of a yoga class, or we think about, a guru who's sitting there with their legs crossed and, someone trying to reach a higher plane of existence, to try to completely empty their mind. And that's not what mindfulness is about. We're not trying to get rid of anything. We're not trying to achieve a higher state of anything. We are simply practicing noticing what's going on around us. So it's that directed paying attention. And again, it can be a type of meditation, as we'll see in just a minute. But we can practice mindfulness when we're engaged in things. So we can be mindful as we eat. We can be mindful as we go for a walk through our neighborhood. We can be mindful when we're cleaning, when we're cooking. Mindfulness isn't something that we necessarily need to set aside time for. It's something we could do throughout our day. So in the mindfulness meditation, we're going to be doing, basically you choose to focus your attention on something specific. Using your five senses is a really great way to practice mindfulness. Think about what sounds, what sights, what sensations we're feeling, what smells we're smelling. So we're going to be doing a guided breathing meditation, mindfulness meditation today. So basically we're just going to be paying attention to our breath, and we can use our five senses to maybe key in on some different aspects of our breath in that way. Again, I mentioned mindfulness is an evidence-based practice. It can help reduce anxiety and depressed mood. Heart rate monitoring shows a more adaptive response to stress. So when people are feeling stressed, their heart rate isn't necessarily being raised. They're able to avoid that fight or flight response going off quite as much. Emotional awareness, just knowing what we're going through, what we're experiencing, getting in touch with ourselves, knowing that, hey, I'm angry and it's okay that I'm angry, or I'm feeling really sad today and it's okay that I'm feeling sad. And for students, it's really important. It also improves memory and concentration. So those are two of the most important things that students need: the ability to pay attention in class, and then the ability to retain that information so you can use it, in papers, quizzes, tests, and eventually out in the workforce. It's important to know that while I love mindfulness, it is not some, magic pill that it's going to just fix everything. It's not a replacement for medical treatment. It's not a replacement for therapy. It is a tool that we can use in our tool belt of positive coping skills. This on its own is not going to, cure my anxiety or cure my depression. Another limitation is that sometimes when we're paying very close attention to things in our physical body, we can sometimes get a freeze response. Fight, flight, or freeze actually is the third response to stress, but we almost get stuck on that physical pain or even emotional pain that we might be experiencing. So if anybody here does have any sort of chronic physical pain, or does have some unresolved emotional traumas that they've gone through, it might be better for you to just kind of observe the mindfulness exercise as opposed to participating in it necessarily. It doesn't mean that mindfulness can't be useful, but it really should be done in a more one-on-one setting with a trained individual who can help you through some of those maybe freeze or stuck responses. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do our exercise. So get comfortable in whatever chair you're sitting in. You can do this laying down if you'd like, however you're most comfortable. And there's going to be a person talking, a guy talking, and letting you know all the different things that you need to do, which is pretty much just pay attention to your breath. So get ready.
This next practice is a breathing meditation. In this style of meditation, we focus on breathing not because there's anything special about it, but because that physical sensation of breathing is always there. Throughout the practice, you may find yourself caught up in thoughts, emotions, sounds. Wherever your mind goes, simply come back again to the next breath. If you're distracted the entire time and come back just once, that's perfect. Sit comfortably. Find yourself a stable position you can maintain for a while, either lying on the floor or a bed or sitting in a chair. Close your eyes if you like, or you can choose to leave them open and gaze downward towards the floor. And then draw your attention now to the physical sensation of breathing, perhaps noticing the always present rising and falling of your abdomen or your chest. Perhaps instead noticing the air moving in and out through your nose or mouth. With each breath, bring attention to these sensations. There's nothing you need to do or make happen. And if you like, mentally note breathing in and breathing out. Many times over, you'll get distracted by thoughts or feelings. You may feel distracted more often than not. That's normal. There's no need to block or eliminate thinking or anything else. Without giving yourself a hard time or expecting anything different to happen, when you discover that your attention has wandered, notice whatever's distracted you and then come back again to the breath. Breathing in and breathing out. There's no need to strive to make yourself feel anything special or to get anywhere or to block anything out. There's not even a goal of relaxation. That may happen, but you can't force yourself into feeling anything at all. Simply noticing each time you find your attention somewhere else and returning it gently back again to your breath. Practice as well pausing before making any physical adjustments, such as moving your body or even scratching an itch. It's always okay to take care of yourself, and with intention shift at a moment you choose, allowing a space between whatever it is you're experiencing and what you choose to do next. And wherever your mind is right now, returning again to the next breath. You may find your mind wandering constantly, caught up in a whirlwind. That's normal too. Instead of wrestling with or engaging with those thoughts as much, practice observing, noting wherever your attention has been, and then returning again to the physical sensation of breathing. Don't try to hold on too tightly to the sensation of breathing either. If you feel yourself straining or tight, let go. Ease up a little. The mind will remain busy whatever you do. Seek balance. If you find yourself mostly daydreaming and often fantasy, devote a little effort to maintaining your focus. Let go of any sense of trying to make something happen. For these few minutes, create an opportunity to not plan or not fix or whatever else is your habit. Breathing in and breathing out, returning your attention to the breath each time it wanders elsewhere. If you find yourself distracted through most of the practice and come back to just one breath, that's perfect. Continue to practice observing without needing to react. Just sit and pay attention as best as you're able. As hard as it is to maintain, that's all there is. Come back over and over again without judgment for yourself or expectation. So continuing to practice, note wherever your mind is right now and come back again to breathing. Breathing in and breathing out. And when you're ready, gently opening your eyes. Take a moment and notice any sounds in the environment. Notice how your body feels right now. Notice your thoughts. And emotions. And then pausing for a moment, decide how it is you'd like to continue on with your day.
Okay. So as we wrap this up, the exercise, I want you all to take a minute or two and just think about what you experienced. Was it something that you enjoyed? Checking in with yourself. Are you feeling a little bit more relaxed? Are you feeling pretty much the same? Maybe you felt a little bit of something, but not much of a difference. Maybe you hated it. Say whatever you're feeling right now. Again, no judgment. That's how you're feeling. It is what it is. And that's one of the, again, central tenets of mindfulness and why I love it so much. The important thing to note also that when we are putting a new coping skill into place, nothing is ever going to work perfectly right away. So you'll notice maybe your mind was wandering a lot. The more you do it, it'll be a little bit easier to keep your mind focused. Again, it's that improving that concentration over time. It's not a miracle cure, as I mentioned before, but the more you practice at it, the better you get. But again, there's no perfect way to do it. You will never be able to focus 100% of the time, unless you are like a meditation master, in which case, please let me know your secrets. And it's okay. It's all about just being able to learn how to tune into yourself and tune into the world around you and really being present. So, what are some different ways that we can apply these mindfulness techniques into our daily routines? So, I mentioned the micro mindfulness minutes, and these are some things that we can, just carve out minutes as we're going through our daily routines to focus, again, just take a few deep breaths and focus on your breath during that time. So, not just taking the breaths, but focusing on that breath, being aware of that breath, just like we did in the activity. Um, you know, take 3 breaths, 5 breaths. It doesn't need to be a long, prolonged meditation. Sometimes when we're either feeling stressed, we just kind of need to walk away from the situation. Or when you've got like that 400th email and you're like, oh my goodness, just kind of closing your eyes, taking a couple mindful breaths. It doesn't make the stressful thing go away necessarily. What it does is it equips your brain to be able to handle it better. I mentioned earlier, being mindful as we're performing different tasks that we do. Showering. So many people talk about like a hot shower or a hot bath as being a really great self-care thing. But when we're taking a shower every morning or every evening, are we just kind of rushing through it? So really enjoying that shower. Again, I mentioned driving earlier. Eating is something that we have to do every day. I'm very much a proponent of mindful eating. I don't believe we should be cutting any sort of food groups out of our diet unless you go to a doctor that specifically says, you have diabetes, you need to cut down the sugar. Listen to your doctor. But we need fats, we need carbohydrates, we need vegetables and fruits, proteins. We need all these different things to make our body run at its most efficient. And if you're a person like me that enjoys food, enjoy your food. If you're going to fuel yourself and take a moment and really like sit and savor that breakfast rather than just shoveling it in your mouth as you're running out the door. Again, you're not going to be able to do that for every meal, and that's fine. But maybe commit to one meal or one snack a day that you really are mindful. Putting your kids to bed. How often are we maybe rushing through that part of the nighttime routine because we've got a million things to do afterwards? I try not to be mindful during cleaning because I hate cleaning. So the less I focus on it, the better. But again, going for a walk in your neighborhood. That's something that we've done over the summer and the fall semester, a walk with the Shaw Center program, where you go out in your neighborhood, we're on Zoom together, and I lead a mindfulness meditation, just to be aware of your 5 senses and your surroundings. You can also take 3 mindful breaths every time you switch gears. So, when you pull into your parking space at work, if you're still going into work, taking 3 breaths before you get out of the car and taking 3 aware breaths before we get out of the car. That's kind of a signal that, okay, I'm going from, driving mode to work mode. For me now, it might be, as I'm walking down the hallway or after I eat breakfast, I generally come back upstairs to start work. So, as I put the dishes away, taking 3 breaths before I walk back up those stairs. When you come out of maybe a stressful meeting or maybe not a stressful meeting, maybe you're just like, I'm so done with Zoom right now. Again, closing our eyes, taking those 3 breaths, those aware breaths before we go and check our email. Give our brain just a second to kind of pause, just take a small break. Or again, parenting mode to sleep mode. Maybe you had a really great time, tucking your kids in at night, or, playing, hanging out, doing homework, whatever it is you do with your children. But now it's time to go to bed. So, making sure that we are getting ourselves ready and putting ourselves in that sleep mode so we can go to sleep. Checking in with our body. I mentioned that's something that I do frequently, with my neck, my shoulders, because that tends to be where I hold my tension. But, checking in with our posture. Do we tend to kind of slump maybe when we're feeling stressed or when we're feeling sad? Our faces, we tend to hold a lot of tension in our face. So if you notice, when you check in with yourself, are your teeth clenched? Is your tongue kind of like glued to the roof of your mouth? Is your forehead like really wrinkled up, and really tight? Is our physical body reacting to what's going on around us? I also mentioned in our interactions with others. Um, so often we are in a conversation with somebody and we're listening to them, but we're thinking about what we want to say next, right? Like, oh, I have the best story to tell next. Or, oh, I need to tell them that they should try to do this to solve their problem. When you find yourself doing that, just stop yourself, say, hey, wait, I'm not focusing on what they're saying anymore. I'm focusing on myself and what's going on in my own head. You know, we need to start listening to understand what people are saying as opposed to listening to respond. Making good eye contact is another really great way to be mindful. So we're not looking at our phone or the computer or even a book. We are present in the moment in that conversation and connecting with somebody, which is hard on Zoom, I know. But if you have maybe family or friends that you live with, that's a great opportunity to practice making good eye contact and those listening skills. Gratitude is another really awesome thing that is encouraged to help combat stress, because it's easy when we're having, maybe even like a medium day, nothing necessarily bad has happened, but nothing necessarily good has happened. And then one kind of crappy thing happens. We kind of color the whole day with, oh, it was such a bad day. But maybe it was only 1 5 minute period of time throughout the whole day, but now we've colored it as this like negative thing. So before we sit down to a meal, or before we go to bed at night, taking the opportunity to journal. Or I've seen like the gratitude jars where people write down like on little slips of paper and then put it in the jar. But just, what is something that you're grateful for today? What was something that was positive? What was something that went well? What are you thankful for? It's a really really good tool to be present and to be thoughtful about our day, and to really be able to see the positive that goes on even through the negative, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in that negative. Engaging your five senses. I make these soothing jars. You can look them up on Pinterest. They're super inexpensive and easy to make. All you need is like a plastic water bottle, water, glitter, and food coloring and clear glue. That's it. You basically mix them all together and it kind of creates like your own colored snow globe. And just using that, shake it up and just watch it until the glitter falls to the bottom. And you've probably taken 2, maybe 3 minutes of being aware and being focused on that sense of that vision, that sense of sight. Play-Doh really engages that sense of smell, sense of touch. People who are very tactile, maybe like bubble wrap also. For myself, I'm very in tune with my sense of smell. So scented lotions are something that I always have around me. My current scent is rose. But I also like to have, candles, anything that smells good, good foods that are cooking, throw some onions in the pan. Or throw a little bit of vanilla in the oven, and get some of those good smells going, in your space. There's also different apps that you can use that help promote mindfulness. That they have a lot of free meditations on there. Some of them have like a reminder feature at certain times of the day where it'll pop through on your phone and say, remember to breathe, and taking a couple breaths during that time. Calm is a really popular one. Headspace. There's another one that I found called Breathe, Breethe. I really like that one. It even, around election day had like specific election mindfulness meditations. It was really cool. So, and a lot of them are free. You might not, have access to all of their features for free, but there's always at least some features that are free on these apps. Plus, there's also a website called mindful.org. That's where the meditation that I just did with you all came from. So there's a number of really great free mindfulness resources out there. If you just take the time to, commit, set aside that specific self-care time and say, I'm going to do a 15-minute meditation today, or I'm going to do a 5-minute meditation today, or maybe I don't have time for a meditation today, but I'm really going to pay attention and enjoy my shower when I wake up in the morning. So there's so many different ways to incorporate mindfulness into our self-care routine and into our daily routine. Okay. So that is it from me as far as our Managing Stress with Mindfulness presentation. I hope you all enjoyed. Again, I mentioned, please go check out the Shaw Center website. It's just montgomerycollege.edu/Shaw, SHAW-center. Or you can search for us on the Montgomery College site and we'll pop up. We keep an up-to-date list of the different events that we have going on. So if you're interested in Mindful Mondays, or if you're interested in our support groups, the information about how to sign up is there as well. So thank you so much for being here. I hope that this was a positive experience for you, and I hope you have a very healthy and well rest of your day.